All right, everyone, you remember the Rutland Refugee Resettlement Program where a big 14 people total have actually come in and been resettled in the Rutland area, some temporarily, by the way, under the refugee sort of Obama-era stuff that we did from Syria. They're Syrians. Here it appears that they did better background checking than in some places where it appears that most people aren't even from Syria. And the people who came here were actually families as opposed to, hey, yeah, here's my 40-year-old 10-year-old son. He looks 40 because he's been in a war zone, so, don't ask too many questions. By the way, we're actually from, like, Libya, but, we're Syrian, too. That's been a problem in the refugee program. There's a reason why it needed reform. Here it looks like, thankfully, that was prevented. But it caused the sixth-term, I believe, mayor to be kicked out. Now Alair's in there. So the neoliberal that was running the city decided to ignore everyone and say, no, I don't care about your concerns. We're going to resettle refugees. I'm not even telling the council beforehand. 72 hours before I make the final paperwork, sort of complete and signed, I decided to tell the council, oh yeah, by the way, I'm taking in a bunch of refugees into the city. And I think that the idea was they assumed Clinton would win and that refugee movements would continue. We would keep bombing third world nations in order to take in groups of people from them, which is basically an underhanded way of getting around the limit on the number of visas that we issue to people. Because it's not like illegal immigration. You're giving a legal status to people. It just happens to be refugee. And then the idea is that you never actually send them back. You eventually give them amnesty. Now, this is what the Democrats have wanted for a long time. They like to bomb someone's home nation, then keep them here long enough to make them reliant on handouts or on some other job program or healthcare or whatever, while ignoring homeless veterans here in order to make them Democratic voters. It's basic. They don't actually care about the refugees. They see them as a voting bloc. We know this for a fact. They think the same thing about the several million dreamers in this country, too. According to their own group there, their leaked memo, oh yeah, we can't let Trump end DACA. We can't let Trump send anybody back because these will be Democratic voters. Basically, oh, in order to vote, they're going to need amnesty. I wonder what the Democrats were planning. Yeah, we're not going to give anyone amnesty, says Obama. No, the plan was you wouldn't, Hillary Clinton would, but she didn't win. Pity for you. Well, that program now has officially ended. It's basically been put in limbo because it's not clear the federal government's going to feed any refugees to Rutland. That's probably a good thing. Look, why don't you just fiddle around? Why don't you lower the tax situation in Rutland itself, get rid of some of the regulatory bullshit, allow some of that largely unused land on the fringes of the city and town to be developed, and you won't have a problem with, oh yeah, our population's aging. Now, why don't you attract people into Rutland then? Why don't we use our leverage to weigh in over the state itself and try to get the state to reduce taxes? I've been arguing for years now. Our state taxes are too high. We've got high property taxes, a high sales tax, high regulatory burden, a high state income tax. People can't make businesses here. Well, fucking, they're going to work in some other state. There are a lot of people who live in Vermont, work in New Hampshire or New York. Why do you think that is? They work in Massachusetts somewhere. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if there are a handful of people who work up in Canada. They're willing to go across the friggin' border every day just to get to work. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. We are a very high-tax state. There are other ways to solve our problems. Your workforce, your population is aging because a lot of people, they get a really great education in Vermont and then they realize they got tens of thousands of debt, or they just go to high school and get trained and then they move out, they go somewhere else. Someone gets a 4-year engineering degree, they go out and work on an oil rig down in Texas, or they go to the Dakotas to work in a mine somewhere, make 60, 70K a year. Where can they do that here in Vermont unless they get one of those 2 jobs a year at IBM? They're not going to make that kind of money. Why would they want to make less money and pay more in taxes on that money for the benefit of living in a state that can't even fix its own roads? Vermont has a lot of scenery with great educational rating, great environmentalism. The state is beautiful. That being said, other than that, we don't have any advantages. People would, if they want a state comparable to Vermont in looks, they're going to go to New Hampshire. They'll say, oh, at least there's no sales tax. The cost of living is considerably lower here. It's still high nationally, but it's lower than Vermont, and there are more jobs. It's more job friendly. People can make it in New Hampshire. Why not here? Why can't we model things on New Hampshire? Why do we have to be the dumb little brother, basically? Geographically a bit larger, much lower population. I wonder why that is. It's not all due to terrain. Why don't we have a Manchester? Because basically we don't. Why don't we partner with them and try to get things going so we're like New Hampshire 2.0 instead of them being sane and having jobs and us having basically, oh, we have a couple of family farms. They're tourist enclaves. We have ice cream and some maple syrup. That's great. It's great to market those things. That doesn't make high-paying jobs for literate people after they get our world-class education in the state of Vermont. Someone gets a master's degree here. What job in Vermont is going to give them what they need to pay back their student loans at all? There aren't really that many. They have to be independently wealthy. Once 1 in 1,000 people maybe gets into one of those lucky positions like I have, where I'm self-employed and you know my income is reliant on like a worldwide audience. But if I were working in the state of Vermont itself, even having gone to UVM, what do you think I'd be making a year? 25K, maybe 30K? That's not enough to live in a state like Vermont. That's not enough to I mean, yeah, if you're willing to be in a low-rent apartment and work your ass off, yeah, you can get by, but you're not getting ahead, really. Not really. Now, you know, you have a kid and then you're falling further behind. There are a lot of people with a lot of debt in Vermont, too. People think they come to this state and they go to like Killington, or they go to Woodstock, or they go to the nicer areas like Burlington or something, stay in Brattleboro. And they see the tourist resort and the nice snow-capped mountains. They go skiing, they have some fucking cider, they get some maple syrup. You know, they're from the upper middle class, so they don't want to mix with the average Vermonter who actually is not rich. You know, there's an underbelly to even places that are rich like Woodstock. Woodstock, you travel along the green, you see these big-ass mansions where people who make millions of dollars live. And you see the nice pretty business fronts, nice and well painted, everything's very, very scenic, mountains in the background, Gillingham's rustic appeal, and nice. It looks, you know, like a quaint little village. Then you go behind that facade and you find, you know, the trailer park and the dumpy apartments, you know, for $300 a month because no one would be willing to pay more. Uninsulated and built in the 1830s. It's sort of where I was raised. You know, just because it looks scenic to you as an outsider doesn't mean it's really all that. People love to use Vermont as a sort of standard bearer of liberalism. Trust me, that's not a great idea. You know, if I ran for office, I would blow your arguments completely out of the water if you brought Vermont up. Oh, he comes from a liberal state. Look at how wonderful it is. No, fuck, it's not. No, really, for the average person, it sucks shit. I'd rather go to Texas. If I was going to be in the lower middle class and be anywhere in the U.S., I'd want to be in Texas. Hell, you definitely get by down there on a lower middle class income. 25, 30K there, yeah, you can have a little house. You try doing that here. Couldn't even buy the fucking land to prop up a tent on here in Vermont, in most locations. And think about it, Vermont's not even the highest tax. There are places that are even worse than that. Try living in New York City. You know, like I would want to. I don't even want to go there. That Mines conference, it's coming up in... I think March, if I remember correctly. I might actually go to New York City to attend it. I was thinking about just calling in, but then I heard about several other people that are going to be there that I really respect, so I'm thinking, just for a day, maybe it'd be okay. You know, I'm not going to do anything other than show up and then leave, basically, because I hate big cities, but yeah, I think it'd be a possibility. Maybe there are a couple fans in the New York City area. Have a little meet and greet, go out and have lunch, and then they'll come back home, and I'll sit out in the woods for several hours just to decompress. But no, the refugee program, it was sold to us on the basis of, hey, aging population, lower population, you know, declining population, elderly people. We need people to come in and be slaves for the elderly middle class that's beginning to, you know, the retiring boomers. Well, that's nonsense. Look, one thing about the immigration debacle that I found funny is we're bringing people in for jobs that are supposedly going to be destroyed by automation in the next 10 years. Why does that make any sense at all? To me, I'm thinking that this was dreamed up by idiots like Krugman, who also thought Trump's election was going to tank the economy. That's honestly what I believe. I think that they're full of shit. I think that most of them know it. They're too academically trained to actually be dumb enough to believe their own bullcrap. So it has to be an attempt at propagandist manipulation. But there are refugees here in Rutland. They haven't caused any problems, which is what I expected would be the case, but part of that is we didn't bring in a whole shit ton of people. They were arguing, oh, let's bring in 100 people, or some inordinate sum. It's like, you do realize there are homeless people in Rutland. People from Rutland, some people born in this county. They can't find a home. They can't get city services for mental health issues. They're addicted or whatever, and you want to spend a bunch of money to house people from another continent. That does not seem noble to me. That doesn't, it's not generosity and nobility and stuff. It's like when Being Liberal posts one of these whack-ass articles and they're like, oh, just think if we had banned Jewish people from immigrating to the U.S. during World War II, what would have happened? And they're trying to compare like the Syrian refugees to the Holocaust. We weren't the ones that were putting people in ghettos. We are the ones bombing Syria and attacking civilians with our good friends in the FSA, or at least we were under Obama. We're the ones now with an open-ended engagement in Syria that's going to cause the same problem. For Europe especially, it's going to suck dicks. We're actually the opposite of our position in World War II. We're the aggressors in Syria, definitely. Absolutely. We're the ones that fired the first shots when we began buddy-buddying with rebels in Syria that wanted an Islamic state there. Not ISIS itself, but of course the FSA, being fundamentally the same, just nationalistic. We want an Islamo-fascist Syria instead of an Islamo-fascist caliphate like ISIS does. Well, you know, the US government largely is responsible for the shit going on in Syria. Yeah, it's got a responsibility towards the refugees. The average person never supported that sort of bullshit. Even a lot of Obama's people. Now, when Obama wanted to strike Assad, what happened? They conducted polling, and something like 3/4 of the U.S. population said, no, just leave them alone. Let them heal their own nation. They've got their own problems. Don't get involved further than we already are. In fact, a lot of people, I bet, if you had polled them, wanted to withdraw entirely and abandon the whole area. Get out of Iraq. Get out of Syria. Let the national governments handle it. It's a lie that the U.S. government is necessary to prop up like the Iraqi government. No, because Assad would have come in and wiped the floor with these groups, and the Iraqi government would have been able to defeat the much embattled, much weakened ISIS anyway, without our help if we hadn't been arming the FSA and keeping Assad on the ropes. Like it or not, he's the sovereign leader of a sovereign nation. You know, he is an authoritarian, dictatorial figure, but he's better than ISIS. That's my argument. Now they're, by the way, saying Russian bots are spreading, release the memo. I can't wait to report in on that. So it's a shit show. We don't need refugees at all in the United States. We don't need immigration in the United States. Some people think that it's a compelling need, and other people boil it down to like nobility, the American spirit or something. I don't call it noble when you've got a proportion of your population, some millions of people who are extremely poor or homeless, and you're not willing to take care of them. You'd rather take care of people who have no national loyalty. I don't consider that noble. No, I'm sorry, I consider that an abomination. Take care of people who are from the United States first. That's the job of the government. It's not our government's job to take care of people anywhere else in the world before it's able to take care of people here. Sorry, that's the way I see it. And some people say, oh, just racist or something. No, some of those people that are like homeless and fucked up here are like black and Hispanic. You do realize that those are Americans, right? You know, a lot of people seem to want to conflate American with white American. It's not what I'm talking about. There are people native born in the United States who are very poor, or they have mental illness that's untreated, they're addicted to something, they're homeless, they don't have enough to eat. Okay, well then why don't we tackle that problem? It'll probably be cheaper because it's already within our national borders. And that's actually part of the population that our government is paid to represent. It's not paid to represent a bunch of refugees. I'm sorry, that's not the case. Those people are represented by a government that Obama wanted to overthrow. Haha, how funny is that? So, yeah, it's a bunch of bullcrap. Never should have been part of the program. For those that are already here, it's like, who cares? Not a really big issue. And I didn't have a big problem with it at the time, but it's the principle of it. It's the principle of there are already people that are hurting within our community, and you're saying, oh, we don't have enough to fix the roads or provide for the homeless that are already here, but we're going to take in more people we have to pay for. We can pay for that. Well, that's bullcrap. Everyone thought it was bullcrap. That's why our old mayor got canned in favor of Allaire. And Allaire's not even like some great noble reformist guy. He's just an average neocon cog. But he's still better than the alternative. The alternative was someone who was so out of touch he thought he could make a dictator-like decision over the entire Rutland community. So screw him. I'm glad he's out of office. It's hilarious. Now, the state should reform the way things are done and take care of people here. That's called generosity. Charity begins at home. I think the state should be more charitable towards people that have difficulty and are native Vermonters. You know, native Vermonters are a dying race. Now, we're not breeding at replacement rates in this state. Most of the people in this state are from other states at this point. Literally, Vermonter is a dying breed. There are still some Vermonters on the east side, so the Connecticut River part of the state. Most of the people on this side, half of them are fucking from New York or Massachusetts or something and retired here. And, you know, their kids went off to go work on an oil rig because they got a world-class education and could do so. Great, we export a lot of really great minds that come back once they're retired. And then we need, you know, a handful of young people to get paid inordinate sums to work in nursing homes. Great, what a wonderful strategy. That will keep Vermont going for a long time. No, it'll kill Vermont. Yeah, it'd be nice to see our state survive. That's about all. Peace out.